Good afternoon. My name is Evelyn Nakano-Glenn, and I'm the founding director of the Center for Race and Gender. And we are very proud to be co-sponsors of this event with Dr. Moncef Marzouki. We are co-sponsoring this with Zaytuna College. I'd like to also thank all of our various co-sponsors whose name you will find in the program. I'm just here to welcome you on behalf of the Center for Race and Gender, but I thought I would use this occasion to heap some praise on the main organizer for this event, Dr. Hatem Bazian, who many of you know. He is an amazingly hardworking and peripatetic intellectual and activist. And we know him at CRG because he is the head of the Islamophobia Research and Documentation Project, which he founded in 2009 through the CRG. And this project has grown tremendously since then and has developed both strong local roots as well as international reach. In addition to many events that he organizes here on campus, Dr. Bazian has built partnerships and co-organized exciting conferences in Europe, North Africa, Canada, and soon India. The Islamophobia Research Documentation Project also established and publishes the Islamophobia Studies Journal, the only academic journal focused on interdisciplinary research on Islamophobia. In addition to all that, Dr. Bazian is a co-founder of Zaytuna College, the first Muslim liberal arts college in the United States. If that were not enough, he also continues to teach a course on Muslim identities through the Asian American Studies program here at UC Berkeley. The CRG is also proud to host two other research groups that have relationships with the Islamophobia Research and Documentation Project, Muslim Identities and Cultures, and the Islamophobia Gender and Sexuality Group. Both are doing crucial work and focusing on the intersections of nation, race, gender, religion, and sexuality. So it is with great pleasure that I next introduce Miriam Navid, who is the Vice President of Student Affairs for the Associated Students of the University of California. And I've also been asked to remind everybody to please turn off your cell phones and other devices, the usual kind of warning. And so please welcome Miriam Navid.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Associated Students of the University of California, I'd like to formally welcome His Excellency Mohammed Moncef Marzouki to our campus. As students, we spend hours inside classrooms and libraries learning the history of the world around us, spending countless hours trying to grasp a decent understanding of the systems governing our surroundings, and desperately trying to turn in papers quickly enough so that we can graduate with our degrees in our hands with the hopes of getting some type of job. It's rare for any of us to find the opportunity to take a step back from the structural requirements of the world around us and appreciate the history that is unfolding in front of our eyes. Being able to see the world as it is in the moment and genuinely appreciate it is something that is rarely found amongst our peers. I remember studying the events leading up to the many popular revolutions in the Arab world a few years ago in my introductory Near Eastern Studies class. Our professor had us read articles and on top of articles and readers that we never actually finished reading because there were so many of them. And we had to critically analyze what we believed were the reasons for the initiation of such a movement. I can say humbly that today it is really an honor to be able to speak to you all and introduce, the first democratically elected president of Tunisia in modern history. But this is not the most notable achievement that I want to specifically highlight and also speak of on behalf of students. the one thing that I really want to focus on is that this is an individual who has achieved the highest level of education and yet has always come back to serve the interests of the people and those around him. And these are the types of people that I, as a student, would want to learn from. These are the types of people that our educational institutions should be looking up to, should be learning from as well. And so that's one thing that I wanted to highlight, as a student on this campus who's really appreciative that somebody like Dr. Marzouki could actually be here. So without further ado, well, actually real quick, thank you to everyone from the Center for Race and Gender, as well as Zaytuna College, and especially Dr. Bazian. He has put in hours and hours and hours of work into making sure that, Dr. Marzouki has the best day here, that he can, have accessibility to as many people as possible. So just real quick, let's have a round of applause for Dr. Bazian as well. And with that, I'll just conclude. We're very grateful, the students on this campus, to have someone like Dr. Marzouki come and just talk to us. So I think Dr. Bazian will be coming out to give a more formal introduction. So please give a round of applause for him as well again. Thanks.
Good afternoon and welcome. It's a pleasure for us to have with us a most honorable guest that honored us with his visit and his presence with us here at UC Berkeley. I'm given the task to give a little bit of background about Dr. Moncef al-Marzouki, just to give a context to the depth of his experience and his background, because we often see people on TV and we reduce the individual to just a small shots of TV, a camera with 2 by 2 inches, and we don't see the depth and the background of the individual. His Excellency Moncef al-Marzouki is actually a doctor of medicine by training. He has a medical degree from the University of Strasbourg, Austria. He's also a human rights activist, an author of numerous books on political philosophy in the Arab world, and the founder of the Center-Left Congress Party for the Republic, which was one of the parties that formed the government coalition from November 2011 to February 2014. In 2015, Dr. Moncef al-Marzouki founded the Movement for Popular Citizenship. For those who know Arabic, Hirak al-Sha'b al-Muwatinin, which is an attempt to try to emphasize citizenship as the basis of political participation within the Arab world, a civil movement seeking to encourage active citizenship participation among all Tunisians, particularly those marginalized under previous regimes. Dr. Moncef al-Marzouki also family was forced into exile to Morocco, where he spent the remainder of his youth years in Morocco. He left Morocco for education in France, where he achieved a degree, and then moved on to his doctorate, to his medical degree in University of Strasbourg in 1973. He went on to practice medicine as specialist in preventive medicine and urology. He also has a degree in psychology from the Faculty of Arts in Strasbourg, returning to Tunisia in 1979. His Excellency Moncef al-Marzouki lectured in medicine at the Medical University of Susa, which is in Tunisia, until he was sacked from his position in the year 2000 for his political activism. In 1980, he joined the Tunisian League for the Defense of Human Rights, of which he became the chairman in 1989. In 1983, he was referred to justice after creating the National Committee for the Defense of Political Prisoners. In response to his dismissal from the chairmanship of the League due to political pressure, he stood for presidential election. So in 2011, or after the what's called Arab Spring, he actually has been running for presidential office way before the Arab Spring, where we became acquainted with events in the Arab world. He stood for presidential election in opposition to the former dictator Zain al-Din al-Abidin. He was subsequently imprisoned by the security apparatus and put in solitary confinement in March 1994. He was released in June of the same year following a national and international campaign, and many of us who were active in the US and other places were actually engaged in protesting and signing petitions for his release, including at that time the South African President Nelson Mandela, who actually called for his release. So in essence, he was part of the broader political movement, not only in relation to Tunisia, but rather across the world. Coming more closely to the most recent episode, Dr. Marzouki was the first democratically elected president of Tunisia after the January 14th revolution in 2000 event, a very seminal event in modern Arab history, which heralded the onset of multiple popular revolutions throughout the Arab world. We need to be reminded that it was the peaceful revolution in Tunisia that led to the massive movement across the Arab world, including in Egypt, in Yemen, in Libya, and also in Syria, but all the other places where the revolutions took place and people mobilized in the streets, we see the consequences and the circumstances that are faced by the Arab and Muslim world. His lecture today is focused on the Arab Spring, successes and failures. He will give a lecture and a talk on this subject, and then we will open the floor for question and answer in order for us to have a dialogue and understanding of what have befallen the Arab world in the period that we are witnessing at this particular time. I'll call on you, please, to help me welcome, a very round welcome from UC Berkeley, to His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Moncef al-Marzouki.
Good afternoon. Distinguished guests, professors and students, it's an honor for me to be with you today and to have the opportunity to speak in a university well known for its role in battles for free speech and civil rights. But let me first express all my gratitude to the Center for Race and Gender, for Zaytuna College, and for all the organizations which are behind this event. Well, rather than enumerating the tragic events that have taken place in Syria, Libya, Egypt, I would like to propose a tentative explanation of the crisis of a region in which the enthusiasm of 2011 has given way to war, restoration, and violence. As you know, the Arab Spring is the most remarkable transformation that the Arab world has witnessed since the wars of independence in the 1950s. Just like then, this crucial and decisive turning point represents the highest challenge and opportunity for our future. The present moment has a number of characteristics that distinguish it from the other key transformations that have marked the past decades. A general crisis has affected to varying degrees all the Arab countries. It's an essentially Arab crisis. The traditional foreign factor, be it Western or Israeli, plays a very minor role. This comprehensive crisis has an impact on national political systems, but also in the reconfiguration of regional borders, and also probably on the level of all the country in the world. It's mainly a crisis of the state, as an entity that has lost its prestige and does not intimidate people anymore. It's the crisis of the state everywhere in the Arab country, whether it is, let's say, nationalist or whether it's Republican, or it's really the crisis of the whole political system. Actually, the violence unleashed by the Arab revolutions represents an effect of the unresolved contradiction between society and states. Subsequent to the colonial era, the society of the Arab world developed much faster than the political elites. Through education, circulation of people and ideas, and cultural exchange with the rest of the world, thanks to new technologies, new media, but also to their own rich and plural resources and histories, Arab societies developed in line with the rest of the world. I would like to remind you that, well, let's say that we Arabs are 350 million people. 50 million, about 50 and perhaps a little bit more, belong to the middle class. And this Arab middle class is very close to the middle class here in the United States or to the middle class in Europe, having the same needs of political freedom and so forth. So we are modern societies, but unfortunately we have archaic states, and this is the main problem, the main contradiction. This is why we have had this, what it's called the Arab Spring. So Arab societies developed in line with the rest of the world, contrary to what proponents of cultural explanation are. The cultures of Arab societies are as diverse, creative, and dynamic as any other is, and contain no inherent impediment to democratization. Arab states, by contrast, have remained deeply archaic and parochial. Well, if you compare, for instance, dictatorship, our dictatorship, and the dictatorship in Europe or in, let's say, in Asia, then you will see big differences, the big differences between those dictatorships and our dictatorship. European totalitarian regimes have based their legitimacy on grandiose chemical and destructive ideological project, the creation of a super race, of a society without classes, of a new man, etc. But Arab dictatorships, by contrast, never had any other ambition than distinguishing the maximum proportion of distributing the maximum proportion of wealth and honors to the group upon which they rely in order to maintain their hegemony for the longest possible period, at the expense of the other elements of society. This way of exercising power is called by our most famous historian, Ibn Khaldun, al-Asabiyya. Al-Asabiyya is a word very difficult to translate in English. It means belong to the tribe, and that this tribe is the most important thing for a person, that the person must belong to a tribe and must be faithful to the tribe, and that together the members of the tribe have to exert power and to have to keep their, to take the most important part of the wealth to themselves, despite the rights of the other member of the society. So the foundation of modern Arab dictatorship has not changed much from what Ibn Khaldun described in the 14th century. In the 14th century, they still function as 2 or 3 generation dynasties. They see the people as subject and not as citizens. The power that consolidates and that then corrupts the Asabiyya produces self-amnesia. Through its consolidation process, the Asabiyya becomes hostage of its greed and appetite and forgets its own origins and genealogy, which contributes to its weakening. The same process of consolidation followed by the self-destruction has been at play in numerous Arab dictatorships, always at the expense of societies. My point here is simply to underline that the Asabiyya remains the foundation of political power and the organization of Arab states, no matter the ideologic cover employed, whether nationalism, socialism, or even democracy. Ben Ali, our former dictator, was talking more about the democracy and the human rights more than I was talking about. And I remember that I was so disgusted with his discourse that I remember that I said to many people, let's try to find other words, because the words dictatorship, democracy and the human right now, I'm disgusted with this word. I don't want to use them because they were so much used by the dictator himself. So the Asabiyya is based, still we have still this problem. We didn't get rid of Asabiyya, even after the Arab Spring. The Asabiyya is based on family ties in the Gulf, on regional ties in Tunisia and Algeria, on sectarian solidarities in Lebanon and Syria, on tribes in Yemen, and on cooperation in Egypt, where the military caste plays the role of a tribe or religious group. So, throughout the Arab world, the challenge is the same: how to transform states of nature into states of law, how to shift from the Asabiyya to the law, from the confiscation of political power to its sharing for the welfare of the many. It's our main challenge everywhere in the Arab world. So, the Arab revolutions have shown how difficult it's to transform those archaic states. How difficult. I never expected that the transition to democracy would be so difficult and so complex, not only in Libya or Egypt, but even in Tunisia, where it's supposed to be a success story. In fact, it is a half success story. We still have the same challenge, even in Tunisia. Asabiyya didn't disappear in Tunisia. So in order to grasp the force and persistence of the Asabiyya, it's sufficient to look to any state. Everywhere, the emergence of democratic states has been challenged or destroyed through authoritarian restoration, war, or even democratic elections. In Egypt, the democratic state was abolished 1 year after it was established, supposedly because its Islamist majority represented a threat to democracy. In fact, democratic rule demanded that this party fulfill its term and that its achievement be sanctioned by the following vote. In other places, such as Syria and Libya, the archaic state preferred the annihilation of the people to its own destruction. We do know that the Arab Spring has lost many battles, but could it win the war? There are, for me, 2 reasons to be optimistic, namely the increasing weakness of the archaic dynastic state and the growing force of civil society. First, the archaic state has fewer mechanisms to implement its ambition. In a context marked by the worsening of political, social, economic, and environmental problems, it does not have the capacity to control information in order to manipulate the public. In addition, it's getting more difficult for rentier states to buy social peace in oil-rich countries. All that is left is violence, instigated by the police. However, this violence, like in Egypt, is far from helping it to sustain itself. But I do believe that it will accelerate its fall. I expect that this brutal, harsh, and corrupted dictatorship now in Egypt will not last. Second, the development of civil society that has spread throughout the Arab world is also a decisive development. Here I am not talking about the selective and partial understanding civil society that of women or youth movements that international financial institutions and Western NGOs cherish in order to justify their depolitizing approach to democracy in the Arab world. Rather, I am talking about the complex and rich set of practices through which Arabs reinvent social links beyond the solidarity of the Asabiyya and across differences of generations, gender, or religion. Political parties may still represent the vestige of the Asabiyya, as in the case in Iraq or Lebanon. However, they also increasingly constitute melting pots where very different people meet because they share political views and not because they belong to a similar ethnicity or religion. The same degree of cross-religious, transgenerational, and transcultural innovation and creativity is present in the work of civics association, artistic performances, and environmental activism, etc. Unfortunately, there is also an important reason to be very careful about hopeful happy end, terrorism. Let me here express my sadness, anger, and indignation at the massacre that took place in Tunis on November 24th, in Paris on November 13th, and before that, those that occurred in so many other cities, including New York, Madrid, London, Nairobi, Beirut, Ankara, and so forth. In Tunisia, the primary objective of the political assassination and the numerous terrorist attacks against our security forces and our citizens between 2011 and 2015 was to sabotage our democratic transition. It partially succeeded, since the return of the former regime, albeit through elections, was largely a direct result of the politics of fear and of the tendency on the part of the public to prefer security to liberty. The same mechanism is at play in more established democracy. The Patriot Act in the United States, following the attacks on 9/11, is not a simple, I hope it's not a simple, could be not a simple parenthesis in the long history of the American democracy. It reflects a general trend in the history of Western democracy, whereby the spaces of freedom have shrunk whilst terrorist attacks have multiplied. In France, after the attacks of November 13th, numerous experts and politicians have called for a French Patriot Act. Under the influence of fear, many citizens declare themselves ready to sacrifice freedom at the altar of security. In every country, in Tunisia, in Egypt, everywhere. And this is the most important threat against our future democracy. The waves of violence that have swept across a number of Arab countries in the past decades demonstrate that, in fact, dictatorship is at once the mother and the daughter of terrorism. Terrorism benefits from the corruption and injustice that dictatorship enables. Dictatorships benefits from terrorism as such. A mode of government presents itself as the only response to fight the violence and inhumanity of terrorist violence. To do so, however, it resorts to a higher level of violence and inhumanity. What I'm convinced that terrorism currently is a curse for our society, but it's a blessing for our dictatorship. This is the main problem. It's a curse for our society, but it's a blessing for dictatorship, because in the name of security, we are probably going to lose this freedom we have gained after so difficult and so complex battles. The Egypt of President Sisi is the most obvious and most desperate example of the structural and essential relationship between dictatorship and terrorism. Until now, we have always conceptually opposed democracy with dictatorship. I do believe that we should now oppose democracy with terrorism. The quick question then is the following: will democracy defeat terrorism, or will terrorism defeat democracy? Although I do not wish to sound pessimist or alarmist, I must also express my deep concern for the future of democracy everywhere, both in places where it is emerging and in those where it is already well established. It's crucial to recognize today the increasing interdependence between established and emerging democracies. What will happen if established democracies like yours, which still serve as a standard for others, as a model, accord security priority vis-à-vis rights and liberties? In this scenario, emerging democracies like ours which face still greater challenges, will do the same. If nascent democracies fall under the combined process of terrorism and anti-democratic ideology, these countries will become even bigger sources of violence and instability. They will also drag established democracies toward more authoritarianism and closure. Well, I would very much like to say that emerging democracy have succeeded in acting as laboratories of new strategy to address the security-liberty dilemma. Unfortunately, this is not the case, as old methods and old forces have crushed the formation of these alternative approaches. In the face of this danger, which threaten peace, freedom, and fraternity among peoples, we need a common approach for all democracies, both established and emerging, in order to address the issue of terrorism together. Georges Clemenceau once said that war is a matter too serious to be left only to the military. Likewise, terrorism is a matter too serious to be left only to security experts. A political solution to the tragedies of Syria and Iraq and to the success of the transition of the Arab world to democracy. This political solution would be large-scale grassroots North-South initiative aimed at breaking the cycle of growing distrust among peoples. A Marshall Plan for social and economic development of the South. A battle of ideas led by Arab and Muslim intellectuals in order to win the heart and minds of desperate and disoriented youth. These are the perspectives that we need to develop in order to save democracy wherever it is and to stop the spiral of collective madness into which we all feel increasingly inspired. Thank you so much for your attention.
We'll have a podium in here for people who want to ask questions. Please, the emphasis on questions. And I'll give you 2 minutes. So if you go after 2 minutes, we'll cut you, and then the next person will ask their question. So please, by all means, stand by the microphone and pose your question to His Excellency.
Hello. Thank you. I actually had a question that was kind of specific about Libya and NATO intervention during the revolution. I just wanted to know, like, what do you think NATO contributed during the intervention in March 2011 to Libya and its current state right now? Do you understand what I mean?
Well, the situation in Libya is much more complex than in Tunisia, because the difference between Tunisia and Libya, for instance, is that we, even under the dictatorship, we have had a very strong civil society, while in Libya, Gaddafi destroyed the civil society, in fact, prevented Libya of having civil society. No political parties were allowed, were accepted, were allowed, etc. So after the revolution, the Libyans found themselves without an elite, really. And this was one of their main problems. The other problem is in Libya, under the cover of national unity. In fact, the country was much more structured with the tribes. So when you give arms to tribes, when you don't have a civil society, then it's very dangerous. For Tunisia, I always said that Libya is not a matter of foreign policy, it's a matter of domestic policy, because, you know, Tunisia, we are about 10 million people, And we do have 2 million Libyan as refugees living in Tunisia. So when I hear that European, they are complaining because they have some few thousand Syrian as refugee, I find I feel that it's not fair. We have this country, Tunisia, 10 million, 2 million refugees. We have accepted those 2 million refugees, and we never complained. We shared everything with our brother coming from Libya. So I'm very upset about what's happening now. I'm afraid that if there is no political solution in Libya, that will have also very much, it will be very dangerous also for the transition, because all of the problems we're having now, terrorist attack, etc., we do know that arms and people come from Libya. I don't know exactly what would happen, because we are waiting for a political solution. We are praying for a political solution. When I was in office, we played an important role to try to, to make people talk and show them the Tunisian model, tried to sell them the Tunisian model, but unfortunately we didn't succeed because of the differences between the structure of the two countries.
Thank you, Dr. Marzouki. You are an inspiration to millions of people, especially in the Arab world and here. My question is, in countries run by corrupt military dictatorship, like Egypt, do you envision a scenario in which the military would give up power without resorting to more killing and more bloodshed?
Well, you know my position. I have been always against the coup in Egypt. And I knew that after the coup in Egypt in July 2013, that we in Tunisia will be in danger, because it's the same problem. So fortunately, Tunisia is also different, because we don't have this corrupted military and involved in politics since the independence of Egypt. Now, my main problem is that this corrupted dictatorship is once again, supported by the West and by the United States. And for me, as a human rights activist, as a Democrat, this is not acceptable, because you cannot talk about promoting human rights and democracy and then support this kind of regime, especially when you do know that, in fact, this regime won't last. I think this regime in Egypt is now living by the terrorism. He is gaining from the terrorist attacks, but the Egyptian people is suffering much from the situation, and I don't understand why the United States and the European still believe that supporting dictatorship they will gain stability. It's not the real stability. The real stability in our country means that social justice means democracy and so forth. But this kind of stability brought by this kind of regime is a false one. It's you gain 1 year, 2 years of so-called stability, and then you have a new revolution, then you have new volcanoes erupting and so forth. This is my position, but I'm afraid the politicians in the West, they are still, they don't think about what would happen in 10 years, in 15 years, because they want just a result for short-term policy, and this is not good for them and for us.
His Excellency, initially I want to thank you for your speech and all activities that have you done till these days. So I have a question that we are recently all talking about the Arab Spring, terrorist attacks, and many things, etc. But we are not talking about who caused these problems, who caused or support these dictatorships, as you mentioned before. But is there any effect that the big Middle Eastern project of Israel or many attacks who is made by biggest countries like USA to the some Muslim countries. Are those things affect the Arabian Spring? Thank you.
Well, this is a very important question. Who is against the Arab Spring? Who is trying to destroy the Arab Spring? It's essential to respond to this question. Well, first of all, you have when we get rid of the dictator, we don't get rid of the many people who are interested in this kind of political system, and they are not 100 but 1,000, and so we have to deal with these people, who have lost everything, and we are very afraid of losing the rest. So this is the main. You have what I would call the domestic threat, but as you support, because you are Democrats, you are human rights activists, you support what's going on with the Democrats in the Arab world. I think the dictators are everywhere supporting each other. So we do know that many Arab states, rich Arab states, were extremely upset about what could happen if we establish a democratic state in Tunisia or in Egypt. So they didn't want this kind of regime to be established in Arab countries, and they spent a lot of money. I'm not going to name this country because I'm still a public man. I am still a politician, and I'm afraid of what I could say. But you do know what kind of countries, rich countries, very rich countries, put a lot of money, in buying media, social media, television, elections and political parties, and they did a lot of, and sometimes I'm asking myself whether they paid also terrorists. I don't know, I don't have the proof, but I wouldn't be very surprised. So it's a battle between the old Arab political system and the new political system, and this battle will be very harsh, very cruel, and will take time.
Hello. My name is Lena. I am a political science student here, and I'm a Tunisian American woman. So thank you very much for your time and for coming out to speak to us. My question is as follows. In hindsight, how do you feel about the Tunisian police and National Guard telling the world that we had potential terrorists training in our mountains, while people from your government told the Tunisian people that these were people just doing sports to burn their cholesterol? And would you now, would you have done anything knowing now the situation of terrorism in Tunisia, that we have real terrorism in Tunisia, and that Tunisian youth play a large part in the growth of Daesh in Syria?
Of course, we have a real threat from Daesh in Tunisia. Of course, we, as I told you, we suffered from the terrorist attacks. I think I lost the election mainly because of the terrorist attacks, because I was attacked myself, being very weak with terrorists, etc. So I do know, but the problem is now the current government in Tunisia is also facing terrorist attacks. So it's a huge problem, but it's not a Tunisian problem; it's a world problem. And if we want to tackle this problem, we have to tackle the roots of it. I'm quite sure that trying to resolve the problem as it is now by only military means or security means won't help. We will not get rid of Daesh only by. I don't say that we don't have to fight against Daesh. We do. We have to do it. But if we want to tackle the roots of the problem, it's completely different. We must have a political solution in Syria very soon, very, very soon. And we must also address the social and economic problems, and we must also address the problem of inequality within the. We must address the problem of the state. We must have a new political system in the Arab world. So it will take time. Don't be naive. It will take time, and we were not going to get rid of Daesh or terrorism with the politics we are having now and with the mentality we are having now. Just saying we are going to drop bombs and we are going to. That's not the solution.
I'm sorry, I don't think you answered my question. My question was, knowing what you know now, would you have done anything differently as president?
Please, I didn't catch your question.
كان أنت كنت تعرف شنو صار توا في تونس يا أخي, like, would you have done anything differently? Like, تبدل شنو عملت وأنت president?
I told you, we of course we have to tackle the problem from the point of view of security, but it's not enough. This is my response. No.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Amir Gidwar, and I'm a first-generation Tunisian American and a UC Berkeley student and a political science major. And I have a quick comment to make and a question for Dr. Marzouki. First off, I just wanted to point out to those who put on the event that to say Dr. Marzouki is the first democratically elected president of Tunisia is rather misleading. He was appointed by the Tunisian National Assembly after the Tunisian Revolution to serve as the interim president of Tunisia, and I think that's an important difference. But secondly, and this is my question for you, in the last year and a half, Daesh, or ISIS, has taken the lives of close to 100 people in Tunisia, and in my opinion, the Tunisian people are not dumb. However, as a country, Tunisia has now the most members of ISIS out of any other country represented in ISIS. It's also very embarrassing, but my Facebook feed now is just covered with pictures of former President Ben Ali asking for him back and thanking him for all he did for Tunisia in terms of security. Most Tunisians, so this is my question, most Tunisians are educated enough to know that all this largely stems from your very outlandish decision to release thousands of radical Islamic jihadists during your presidency that many before you worked so hard to keep in jail in Tunisia. So, do you not have the slightest amount of guilt or regret in what is happening in Tunisia right now? Thank you.
Well, this is not true because many of those people has been released in 2011 under the government of Berkeley. This must be known. I'm very often accused of this kind of things, but it's not true. What is true is that we have had these terrorist attacks under Ben Ali. The first terrorist attacks was the Jerba in 2001. Then we have had terrorist attacks in Suleiman in 2006 under Ben Ali. And then after the revolution under Berkeley. So look, it's very easy to say, it's your fault, it's your fault. It's our fault, it's our common fault, it's our common problem. Let's be serious. It's an important problem. We have to take the responsibility, all of us, and stop saying, it's your fault, no, actually, I'm not saying that what's happened in Tunisia is the fault of Berkeley. I can say that when I was president, we have had just terrorist attacks in the mountains, but now we have terrorist attacks within the cities. So I can say now, well, look, you said this is my fault, now look what's happening is the fault of Berkeley. I am not saying that, because I am a responsible man. I do know that it's a complex problem, and that we have to unite all together, to fight this important threat. And now, keep our differences, our political differences, beyond. When we solve this problem, then we can go back to our fights and then our discussion and so forth. So please be as wise as we should be, all of us Tunisian.
Can I ask a follow-up?
No, give the opportunity to somebody else.
Thank you, Dr. Marzouki, and thank you for being on our last flotilla as well. We were delighted that you were on the boat. I have just a simple question regarding all of the people that you have included in either the attackers in the Middle East or the attacked. But you left out the biggest terrorist in the Middle East, and that's Israel. And the Palestinians suffer terrorist attacks every day. If there is no justice for Palestine, there really is no justice for anybody. They've been fighting for 70 years. And I'm just curious as to why you didn't include Israel.
Well, I totally agree with you, of course. You cannot expect anything else from me. Yes, of course, I do know that I'm quite sure that we, without the solution of the Palestinian problem, we will have more terrorist attacks. This is why I'm saying that if we want to get rid of terrorism, it's not just a matter of sending planes and sending carriers and so forth. That's too easy. It's too easy response. What we have is the problem is how to tackle the Palestinian problem. But you know that it's the most complex. Sometimes I'm saying that even God, has given up, to trying to solve this problem. But we must still do our best, because here in the United States or in the Middle East or in Maghreb area, we were not going to have democratic states. Look, if we have had those terrible dictatorship for more than 50 years, especially in the Middle East, it was because the problem of Palestine, when our dictators were saying, hey, now the most important thing is to fight against, so we are going to have military regime and so forth. And we lost our freedoms, we lost all, and we lost also Palestine. So now if we want, once again, if we want to have this stable and democratic states in the Arab world, without solving the problem of Palestine, I don't think it will work.
Thank you.
Thank you. As a U.S. trade union activist for 40 years in the U.S. and also as a political activist in the Latin American, I want to ask a two-sided question. You mentioned civil society in Tunisia as being a very significant factor in the development of the Tunisian political process, and that is very true. And I think the question of that, I want to ask about two specific focuses of civil society: the trade union movement in Tunisia and also the military. And my question is this: from the point of view of the trade union movement, which was very significant and still significant as I understand it in Tunisia, at least from my own personal observation and knowledge, what is the situation with the trade union movement? What's its relationship to the process that's occurring now, and its relationship to the difficult definition of whether the Tunisian political process is evolving? Two, in terms of the military, I think that...
Maybe you can let him answer the first question.
Okay, I will respond to both questions. Yes, one of the specificity of Tunisia is that we have a very important trade unions, and that the trade unions played an important role during the modern history of Tunisia. Trade unions were part of the fight against colonialism. Trade unions were part of our... during the revolution, they played also an important role to promote the revolution itself. And when we have these problems between political parties, the national dialogue was partly conducted by trade unions and other civil society organizations. So we owe a lot to the trade unions, and I appreciate very much what they have done for them. And I think they are going to play an important role for the process. You talked about the military. This is also another specificity of Tunisian military. It's professional military, not involved at all in politics, not corrupted at all. Nothing. And this is extremely important, because if you compare Tunisia and Egypt, you will see the difference, because in Egypt, military is extremely involved in business, in politics, and this is why they are now supporting this dictatorship. While in Tunisia, I remember that I have had a very good relationship with the military, and every time we faced any challenge, they said, Mr. President, we are with the government, we are Republicans, we will obey your orders, never have any kind of problem. And this is a blessing for Tunisia. Once again, if we did succeed our transition better than the other country, it's not because we are better than Egyptian or Libyan. It's because structurally we have had this important civil society organization, and because we have this military professional and not involved in politics.
Can I ask my question, though?
Okay, go ahead.
I need to raised this what I think is a very critical point. I agree that the situation is different Tunisia as opposed to Egypt, Syria, Iraq. But when it comes to the military, looking at it a political framework, what you said is all true, but that was also said in Latin America about the Chilean military as opposed to the brutal military in Brazil, the Dominican Republic, and other countries. And then when the critical crisis in Chile under the Allende administration, the military executed what its fundamental role has always been, and that is to repress a class. And so that I think it's important, and hopefully this will not occur, but it's important for those in Tunisia to not to foster such an illusion about the military, because it has historically been brutal when it has to exercise its class power. And that kind of concerns me, the way you're presenting the exceptionalism of the Tunisian military. That's a little alarming.
Next. Dr. Marzouki, on the behalf of myself and a lot of Tunisian friends who couldn't attend today, I would like to thank you and welcome you to California. My question is about the media during the revolution. We saw how big of a role the media played during the Tunisian revolution, and we are talking here about the official media, the private media, and the social media. How hard was it for the presidency of the Republic and the government, which you guys were in harmony with each other during that time, how hard was it to establish new media channels, official channels, or encourage private channels that will kind of counter the negative aspect of the media at that time? We saw they have been playing with the public opinions right and left, but we haven't seen any positive response to that from the government at that time. My question is, how hard is it to establish new channels that will be neutral and objective and that will serve the people and the revolution? Thank you.
Well, this is a very important question, and it was really a challenge for me and for the government, because all of us, we came from the civil society organization, for human rights organization, and so forth, and we didn't want from the beginning, to address the problem of media like it was the case under the dictatorship. But we suffered very much for the fact that the dictatorship, the old regime, they were extremely powerful. They got all the private channels, TV, newspaper, and we have been under harsh attacks during 3 years. Myself, I suffered a lot, because really every day there was, every day, I would say every moment I was under attack. But my opinion, my position at that time is to say, look, we are a new democracy. If we begin by, putting journalists in prison, it was easy. We could do it. Said, no, we have to be very careful. We have to be very patient. We have to show the world and to show our society that we are accepting not only critics, but only even defamation. I stick to this policy, and I can assure you that no journalist was arrested or harassed or so forth. Some people said you were naive, you should have done so and so, and I said, no, I believe that it's much better, to let the people see what is the reality, what's the truth by itself. Much better than to fight against journalists, because everybody would say, we didn't change the paradigm. It's always the same thing. The president is not accepting the critics of the free press and so forth. So what now I think we should do is effectively to try to have channels just saying the truth, because sometimes I feel bitter, because I have been judged, I have been on trial 4 or 5 times because for offenses to the government and so forth. So we fight it really for the freedom of press. And now being victims of the press itself, while we do know that those people, got a lot of money and they are working on for political agenda, that's very, very difficult to accept. But once again, I think that we have to be very careful, very patient, accept that the beginning, even if we are victims of this harsh attacks from corrupted people, I can assure you that many of the journalists were corrupted people, and everybody knows in Tunisia they were corrupted. They worked under the regime, the old regime. They were part of the old regime. But I prefer this long-term policy than facing brutally the press.
Hi, my name is Mina. I'm half Tunisian, and my father and grandfather would have loved to be here today. Well, my question is also very similar. After the revolution, I visited Tunisia over the summer, and my perception of the revolution is very different from what we see here. And as a student, we often study the revolution as a social media movement rather than a social and political movement. And so you often hear people refer to it as the Facebook revolution or the Twitter revolution. And I was wondering if you agreed with the use of the phrase, and if not, what do you think is the driving force of such movements?
Oh, okay. Yes, it's true that Twitter and Facebook played an important role, but the people who died, who have been killed we have had about 308 persons killed, 2,000 people wounded. They were not people just, I think that the people who playing this important role, writing posts in Facebook, they didn't took to the street. So it's not true to say that it's just a revolution of Facebook. It helped very much, but it was just a tool, nothing else.
Saadat al-Rais, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Dr. Hatem, for this. My name is Khairuddin al-Makhzoumi. I'm from Baghdad. And you talked today about al-Asabiyya for Ibn Khaldun, and I think it's an important concept that I want to ask you about the situation in Iraq, where we thought that the invasion of the United States in 2003 would create a democracy in Iraq, but it created a small dictatorship led by political leaders that they are ruling Iraq right now. So how can we have an effective disengagement of this Qibaliya or this Asabiyya toward these political leaders? What are the solution to bring the Sunnis and the Shiite together? What is the process in order to get rid of this? And should we work with the American, or should we just work with Russian closely in order to have this disengagement?
It's a very, very difficult question. First, I do believe that the invasion of Iraq was a catastrophe. And many of our problems began after 2003. Second, I think that under the dictatorship, the reality of the Iraqi society was hidden. So when the dictator was dead, then you saw the reality of our society. Sometimes the dictatorship is here to hide the reality of the society. We don't know what is our society until the society is free. So after that, the departure of the dictator, the Iraqi society, what was hidden, appears to the surface, and what appears to the surface was not very nice. That in fact this society was deeply divided between Sunni and Shia, and so now you have to accept the reality. You have to deal with it. It's not enough, to say, no, we are a united country and so forth. You were not a united country. You were not a united society. You are a divided society between tribes and so forth. So first of all, you have to accept the reality that you were divided, and now you have to reconstruct a new reality, a new unity. And this would take a long time, but you can do it. I think it's possible, because you have a lot of good people who are wanting to try to work together, and but it will take time. I wish you good luck. I know it will be hard.
Hi, my name is Dima, and I will be asking about the Asabiyya again. I'd like to thank you for using this concept, which I think is very, very helpful for understanding what is common actually between all these different situations in the Arab world, things that seem so different, but actually there is a lot in common. So not to ignore the differences, but to focus so much on the similarity. And it also helps explain, as you said, why the Arab Spring did not really succeed. So there is some success and some failure. And my question is exactly there. So if you could think of strategies, one strategy that you can say it works against al-Asabiyya, from experience or from what you have, something that you've tried already or something that you think would work, and also of another strategy that the Arab people have tried against Asabiyya but didn't work. And I'm very curious about your idea of something that is common between the Arab world. So not to forget the differences, but to focus a little bit on the similarities. So one strategy that works against the Asabiyya and one strategy that proved not really successful so far.
Yes, up to now, all the strategies have failed, you know. This is why we have to be very careful, once again, to consider the reality that we are a divided society, that we have, but we have to accept that we are divided, that we are different, and that the state belongs to a minority. And when we accept the reality, then we can, you know, I'm a physician, so its diagnosis is very important for me. You cannot cure any disease without a good diagnosis. And we Arabs, we don't like the good diagnosis, you know. Everybody would say, hey, it's the fault of you, it's for them. But we have to accept that we are a divided society. We are, in fact, all the societies are divided, but we have to accept it and to say, look, we are divided. How are we going to live together? Christian, Muslims, and Sunni, and Shia, Alawi, etc. How are we going to organize the states so the states belongs to everybody and not to a minority? Because the Asabiyya is the fact that the state belongs to a minority. You could tell me that even here in the United States, the state belongs to a minority, the 175 people who are funding the Democrats. But it's not true, because here in the United States, in the West, even if you have very important minority, you have the rule of law. So we, in Tunisia, in Syria, we don't have the rule of law. We still have the role of, you know, the might of the power. Once again, we have to be very clear with our real situation, and then to say we should construct we should have a new deal, we should construct a new state. And this is the challenge. This is what this Arab Spring is about.
Can I follow up just a little bit? I'm really looking for something very concrete. I don't know, like some call from the civil society that worked against the demands of the Arab people. So if you could think from your experience of something that actually works against the Arab Spring, but that comes from within. It's to learn from the experience. I don't want to put pressure, but I'm just begging for some concrete assessment of some strategies that were better than others.
Strong civil society, promoting civil society, because within this civil society, then a lot of the Asabiyya could disappear. But once again, it will be extremely, you must be sure that it will take time. We can do it, but it's more complex and more difficult than expected. I do know this because even in Tunisia, we still have this Asabiyya. You know, we have this burden for centuries and centuries we're not going to get rid of in 10 or 20 years. But you are young. You have to do it. The youth has to tackle this challenge.
Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Marzouki, my name is Hosni, I'm from Tunisia, and I want to welcome you to the Bay Area. So my question is like how you evaluate your experience with the Troika for the last 3 years. Is it a failure or success? And my other question, did you felt any pressure from anybody to make a decision? Because I think you depend, you didn't, when you, in the election, you didn't win the election, you know, so you depend with other entities, so you have to please to other, you know, parties to make your decision. My other question, did you felt any other pressure from different,
exterior, forces, like different country, not from Tunisia, to make some decision. And my last question: how do you classify yourself in the political spectrum right now? Because we don't see any activity. Are you willing to get back again to the politics, or like I don't? Because you are keeping a low profile, to be honest with you, right now. So, I mean, very unfortunate. So.
Well, many questions. The first is how to evaluate, was it a failure or a success? Of course, it was a failure for the opposition. It's a success for me. I mean, the 3 years we spent in the government, we have had 3 objectives. First, writing a constitution, a good constitution. Second, keeping fair elections. And second, keeping the country afloat. And I can say that during the 3 years I was president, this is exactly what we have done. The constitution was, well, we have a very good constitution. I'm very proud of it. We have had this election, the first election, and you know that, well, even if there were some problems, I recognized the results of the election, and then we kept the country afloat. We have to tackle many social and economic problems, but we didn't have to solve all the economic social problems. Don't forget that in 3 years you cannot solve the problems of more than half a century of failure of the former government. About pressure, yes, of course, we have been submitted to a lot of pressure from within this country and outside the country. Everybody, was extremely interested in our experience. So people were involved. I got pressure from everywhere. But I can assure you that all our decision, we took our decision for the interest of the country, and we didn't accept any kind of pressure that would be against the interest of Tunisia. Well, my position about the low profile, yes, I think it was very important to let the government work. My position was, look, when I was in office, we were attacked every day, everywhere. They didn't let us work, and I think it was not responsible because the situation was extremely fragile, and now I do know that the situation is still fragile, and I said, let the government work. If they do well, we will say, good, we are with you, and if it doesn't work, then we will intervene, and I'm going to intervene. Be patient.
Good afternoon, and thank you.
Come close to the mic.
All right. Good afternoon, sir, and thank you. I'm glad to hear you. But I'm a bit confused on your stance on the Daesh issue. I mean, on the one side, you say securities agencies must alone handle the terrorist. On the other side, you say the use of power on the Daesh is not only a solution. What else is the solution for Daesh then, if it's not the use of power?
I don't think he said the use of security is the solution.
Now, what he believes, what I heard in his speech is what he had, the terrorism and the terrorist must only be held by the securities agencies.
No, I said exactly the contrary. I said that it's not enough, that we have, of course, we have to tackle the terrorists by military means, but it's not enough. And this is probably the main difference between me and many other people. I do think that we have to tackle the problem, to tackle the roots of the problem. For instance, if we don't right now, if we don't have a political solution to the problem of Syria, if Turkey, United States, and others, if they don't find a solution very, very quickly to the problem of Syria, then Daesh will become more dangerous. You have to tackle the roots of the problem. And the roots of the problem are political, social, and economic. This is what I said. And it's an illusion to believe that by sending carriers or sending a plane, you will solve the problem. This is what I said.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Marzouki, for coming to UC Berkeley and giving us a talk which is both very accurate and inspiring. Thank you also for taking our question. My name is Jean-Michel Landry. I'm a student here. And 2 years ago, a friend of you and I, Vincent Gesser, who's a French scholar of Tunisia, who was describing me all the effort made by the Saudi regime to undermine the democratic transition in Tunisia. So I would like to have an update on your part on these efforts against the democratic transition, if you recognize those efforts, and if you, yeah.
Well, as I told you, many people, many political regimes in the Arab world, they were very surprised by the Arab Spring. They were very worried, very upset, and they did what they could, to stop the wave. You can understand them. They do know that they could be threatened by the Arab Spring. I think Saudi Arabia played an important role in promoting the coup in Egypt, Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. But now I am not sure that they are very happy with the result. I think the lesson of Egypt is, look, you can put a lot of money, you can do everything, but you cannot stop history. You cannot stop people of dreaming of liberty, of dignity, and so forth. So the failure of the coup in Egypt, because I do believe that it failed, and will probably let those people think again to see what kind of strategy they have to adopt for the next decades, because the problem will remain, and probably they will have to. I hope that they will understand that it's useless what they are doing, to stop the Arab Spring. It's useless. Yes, we can pay a high price, like in Syria, but the people in the Arab world, they are they want really to live like here, like in the United States people, like the European people. As I told you, we have more than 50 million of middle class, and I think we are going to be more and more. So I don't see how those corrupted regimes will stop the wave. Maybe they would think again once. In fact, I don't know. We will see. But I can assure you that as a Democrat, as a human rights activist, we are going to do all what we can to promote the Arab Spring, and they will not stop us.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallahu khair. And thank you, Dr. Marzouki, for an informative speech and a straightforward answers. I also wanted to express my own feeling about being so proud of what the Tunisians were able to achieve, and hopefully they will do more. My question to you is that you had mentioned in your speech that you have achieved half success. Would you elaborate and give us more insight as to what you think the Tunisians need to do in order to solidify their democracy and the progress they already have achieved? And thank you.
Well, the revolution in Tunisia, like in every Arab countries, were about two issues: political liberties and social justice. This was the main problem, the main issues, the two important issues. Why? Because civil liberties, this was the main problem of what we call the elite. And social justice, this was the main problem of the population, the whole population. So I can say that we achieved the first part of the objective of revolution. Yes, we do have now civil liberties in Tunisia. Tunisia, you can, under the dictatorship, it was, for a man like me, it was extremely difficult to have a passport. It was extremely difficult to have such a gathering and so forth. Now Tunisians, the new generation of Tunisians, they feel as free as European or Americans are. So from this point of view, I can say that we have achieved the first issue. But unfortunately, the second objective, social justice, we are very far from achieving it, because it's much more difficult, and that because we have to tackle one of the most important problems, which is corruption. And to deal with corruption means to deal with very dangerous people, well-established people in the media, in the political parties, and the economic organization, and so forth. And this is it's much more difficult and much more dangerous, I would say, for anybody than to tackle the civil liberties. And now the problem in Tunisia is saying, some people would say in Tunisia, we are fed up with your civil liberties. We are not going to eat freedom of expression. We are not going to, to drink freedom of association. We do need the jobs. We do need so forth. And this is the challenge. I am not sure that if we do not give, jobs to people, that they would say sometimes we're not interested in your civil liberties. Your civil liberties, this is for the elite, but we are not the elite. Our problem is not the problems of the elite. And it's very difficult to convince them that we need freedom, to tackle the problem of corruption, and that the problems are linked together. So once again, if we do not promote this social justice, if we do not give jobs to people, I'm not sure that we are going to keep the civil liberties, especially if we are threatened by terrorism. Because what people would say, democracy didn't bring us jobs, but it brings us more and more terrorism, and then we are going to give up our liberties for more security, and this would be the end, really the end of the Arab Spring. And this is what I'm afraid of, and this is what, of course, we will do our best, to avoid this unhappy end. Thank you.
Thank you.
دكتور حاتم معلش أسأل بالعربي.
تفضل.
منذ وفاة الرسول حتى يومنا هذا قلة من حكموا بمعزل عن النار والحديد، وقلة بمن حكموا دون أن يسرق السلطة سرقة. سيسجل التاريخ بأنك كنت واحد منهم. قد أختلف معك كثيرا، لكنك شكرا لأنك تذكرنا بأجمل ما فينا. سؤالي لك: هل تعتقد بأن النخبة السياسية تحديدا في تونس ومصر ذهبت مبكرا إلى المنافسة في الانتخابات؟ هل تعتقد بأننا لم نتفق أصلا على مبادئ الديمقراطية وشكل الدولة قبل أن نتنافس عليها؟ هل دجنت النخبة السياسية الثورة فصار من السهل سرقتها؟ وشكرا.
So he began his statement by saying that since the death of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that few have ruled without usurping power and using might and power to rule. And history should record that you're one of the few that actually have ruled without coming to power by means of might and power. So the questions that he asked about, in particular, the elite, the political elites in the Arab world. If you remind me the first part of it. They went very hastily to the democratic process, and therefore they were unable to transform the movement into an actual gains. And the third one, which did the political elite, were they able to domesticate the political movement that emerged in the Arab world in such a way that essentially redirected its direction.
شكرا على
He is going to answer him in Arabic and I need to translate.
شكرا على
جملة حتى أترجم لحظيا.
فيما يخص يعني هل توافقنا على المسار قبل أن ندخل في الصراع؟ نعم، نحن في تونس يعني قمنا بكتابة الدستور، وكتابة الدستور كانت من أروع العمليات، لأن صار في أكثر من 2000 اجتماع في وسط البلد، في كل مكان، بين الجمعيات، وكتبنا هذا الدستور بعد سنتين من النقاش، أحيانا النقاش الفلسفي المعمق، وبالتالي استطعنا أن نصل إلى نص توافقي الذي بنينا عليه كل ما جرى من انتخابات فيما بعد.
So he said that in Tunisia we were able to actually deal with our internal conflicts and work through the processes with almost 2,000 meetings that have taken place, even meetings that are occurring in the streets in order to resolve some of the contradictions that existed in order to reach for a constitution and agree upon it. So in this sense, in Tunisia, that was the steps that were undertaken for the Tunisian project.
My name is Wajib Olabiar. I'm Tunisian American here. Actually, I have three brief questions. The first one is, there is a fear that the human rights in Tunisia is going to be like abused based on the circumstances going on right now. And what do you think it's going to guarantee that these human rights will be, secured for the people? And what's your address to the Tunisian people, to secure their human rights? Because we see like the torturing in the police stations, people they get killed without no court judgments and everything. So what's your address to Tunisian people to secure their human rights?
Well, after this last terrorist attacks on November 24th, there were a lot of debates on the TV station, and many people were arguing that, look, we have to tackle the problem of terrorism very seriously, and even if we need to torture, why not? The problem is that I have heard this kind of discourse 20 years ago, and my response was, niet, niet, niet. We are going to refuse everything, even if we are not going to accept torture, even for the most evil people. And I can assure you that during the 3 years I was in office, this was my main concern. My main concern is, when I was talking to the military or to the security forces, say, look, if we want to really overcome this threat, it must also, by law and by ethics, you have to abide by law, and you have to accept that our victory against those people should be also an ethical victory and not only a military victory and security victory. So I'm very, very upset by what's going on now. And I can assure you that when I will be back in Tunisia, I will take very strong position against those people, saying we have to get rid of terrorism by all means. No, we have to get rid of terrorism by loyal and ethical means. And this is the main difference. And I think that we Tunisians, we have an important civil society. I am still the honorary president of the Tunisian Human Rights League. And I will address the league and will say, look, it's now time to come back to fight just like it was in the 90s.
Hello, my name is Lamise. I just wanted to thank you, Dr. Marzouki, for coming, and for the host and for everyone for putting this event. So my question has actually been asked, so I'm going to try to ask a similar question and hoping for more insight. So it's fairly straightforward. So how do you categorize your relationship, or Tunisia's relationship with the Gulf countries before and during the revolution? And were they supportive or not? And if you can give us more insight about that. Yes, Gulf countries.
There are a lot of them. So which country?
Okay. In specific, the country that took in the previous president, and also Saudi Arabia, UAE.
I will be very brief and very blunt. We have been supported by Qatar. This is why Qatar is extremely hated by the people in Tunisia who are with the old regime. We have been supported by Turkey and by Qatar. And we have been under harsh attacks by the other countries of the Gulf. And they spend a lot of money, I think, against me, against democracy in Tunisia. And they did the same thing in Egypt. So, but now, as I told you, I don't know exactly whether the Emirates and the Saudi Arabia would keep the same pace, would deal with the other governments the way they did with it. But I can assure you that they are losing their time and their money.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rabab Abdelhadi. I teach at San Francisco State University. First of all, I want to thank you, and I'm really humbled in being in your presence, specifically for the words that Shakir mentioned. You basically sharing power in order to prevent a bloodbath in Tunisia. But in the spirit of debate, and disagreements and critical thinking that we are used to in Arab movements and so on, I want to take issue with two things you've said, and I would really like you to respond, if you don't mind. The first question is the question of the way in which you presented the US as a democracy. I think if we look at the whole question of economic justice in the United States and the poverty, you alluded to that a bit, but also around the questions of the youth who are being killed day in and day out. And I'm sure you've heard of Ferguson, of Baltimore, of all the stuff here, Oscar Grant, everywhere. So I'm I'm a bit concerned about kind of saying democracy without actually qualifying. What do we mean by democracy? People in the Arab world and the revolutions talked about participatory democracy, not the kind of liberal democracy where money really gets candidates to power and takes them out. So I would like you to address the question of the nature of the US itself. The second question is the question of asabiyya. And I really have a very big problem with that, because in our history, in the history of the Muslim and Arab world, there were actually periods when people lived fairly, relatively tolerant of each other, supportive of each other, and so on. A lot of these problems came about as a result of colonial and imperialist intervention, and specifically also as a result of Israel being founded in the region and needing to have similar regimes in which there is sectarian violence, whether we're talking about Lebanon. In Iraq, this all exploded after the US intervention. So I'm really concerned about the way in which we are exceptionalizing and talking about the Arab world as if it is different from other parts of the world, and attributing the problems not to the colonial powers that came and benefited. So my question is always, who profits? Who benefits out of these sectarian divisions? So I'm kind of concerned about us propagating this lie. Thank you.
We're going to take one more question after that, because the president have an appointment after that. So, he answer? If you could ask your question, then the president will answer both together. Last question.
This is a little bit different than that one, but once again, thank you for giving your wonderful talk. What does the experience of taking on the responsibility for a country, especially after a revolution, do to you as a person? And what was the experience of you and your colleagues in that process?
Thank you. So if you could answer both, and then.
Yes, about the democracy, I always think that our emerging democracy in Tunisia and the whole Arab world is not only threatened by terrorism or by political foreign intervention, but the main danger for me is money, corruption. Sometimes I feel that we really, I wouldn't say that I spared my life or I spent my life after a dream, because what I saw in Tunisia is that when you have a lot of money, you can buy political parties. Some political parties are just, have been created by corrupted businessmen. I saw that when you have money, you can buy a lot of journalists. Then you can buy channels. You can even bribe, people to vote for you. And this was extremely disappointing for me and extremely painful to see that you fight your whole life for this kind of democracy, for this kind of result. But at the same time, I said to myself, that's at the beginning. We are an emerging democracy. We have, even in the established democracy like in the United States or in Europe, you have this kind of practices, but they are, I would say, minor practices. While in our countries, we are at the beginning and we have to tackle this problem. So our emerging democracy are threatened by the asabiya, threatened by the terrorism, and threatened by the money, the corruption, and so forth. But we don't have the choice. We have to tackle all those challenges. We have to do something, because otherwise it will be, dictatorship, democracy, and then from democracy to dictatorship, false democracy or failed democracy to dictatorship, and then the social situation of the public, of the people, would worsen. So, once again, I'm talking to the new generation, to the Arab youth, talking all the time. It's now your responsibility. The responsibility of my father's, generation was to fight for the independence. My generation, we fought for establishing, fought against dictatorship, for establishing new democracy. But now the generation, the new generation, Arab generation, they have to tackle the social problem, justice, poverty. This would be really the main problem. Otherwise, once again, even if we established democracies, they would be corrupted democracy, and they won't last. And this is what's the, I would say, the most threatening issues the new generation would face. Now, about my experience, it was an honor for me, to be in this, the head of the state at this very difficult moment. I can assure you that it's the most dangerous occupation you can have. And I won't advise you, to become head of state, because you won't sleep very, very much. You won't be very, it's a terrible situation. It's very dangerous, very painful, extremely complex, but it's also extremely, I would say that you see the human nature, the nature of the society, the challenge. You have an overview of the problems of the society. So it's challenging, it's exciting, but once again, you pay the high price. If you are ready to pay the high price, then be a president. But if you don't, if you are afraid for your life, if you are afraid for your family, if you are afraid for your comfort, stay away. Thank you.
Thank you. Please help me thank Dr. Moncef Marzouki for his visit to Berkeley. Once again, the discussion about the Arab Spring and changes that are taking place in the Arab world will continue. The American Revolution and the changes took a long time, and we're still working on it. It's unfinished business. The French Revolution and many other places. So we need just to step back and examine what is occurring and trust that the people in Tunisia are struggling for a better life, for dignity, for freedom, for democracy, and we need to be their allies as intellectuals, as students, as faculty, to build bridges. And our hope that UC Berkeley can be a bridge to help their effort. Thanks to Center for Race and Gender, Zaytuna College, associated students, and all the people that made this possible. Timothy, from the Director of Events here is the iHouse. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for Moncef Marzouki for being with us. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening.